The following program is sponsored by the Jalinski Advisory Group, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through JW Cole Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through JW Cole Advisors. Jalinski Advisory Group, JW Cole Financial, and JW Cole Advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Josh Jalinski should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Josh Jalinski is not providing legal or tax advice. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. Throughout the show, cash value life insurance is referred to as a tax-free financial vehicle based on the following tax attributes: income tax-free death benefit, tax-deferred accumulation of policy values, and tax-free access to bases. Policy loans in excess of bases are income tax-free so long as the policy remains in force. This assumes the policy is not a modified endowment contract. Loans taken directly from the policy will reduce the death benefit. Tired of losing money in the stock market roller coaster? Frustrated with the government taxing you into oblivion? Worried about inflation? How do you prepare for so many financial uncertainties? Welcome to the show that will help you develop your game plan. The Financial Quarterback with Josh Jalinski. Josh is a noted financial advisor and president of the Jalinski Advisory Group, and he's here to answer your questions. Now, let's kick off your financial future. Here's Josh Jalinski.
The Financial Quarterback, coming to you live. If you have a question on stocks, bonds, mutual funds, any question financial, now is the time to call us. Call our listener call-in line. I am Josh Jalinski, financial advisor and CEO of the Jalinski Advisory Group, Inc., where we take your questions every week. For those of you who want to meet with me or one of my associates, you can pick up the phone now and give us a call at 888-988-5674. Jerry from the Bronx, go ahead. You're on with Josh Jalinski, the Financial Quarterback. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yes, I'm retired. I receive a New York City deferred a 457 plan distribution every year, and I receive a 1099 for that. You mentioned a few weeks ago that I could donate that distribution directly to a charity, and I would not get a 1099 and the charity would have to declare it, whatever they do with it, and I wouldn't have to declare it on my taxes. Does that hold true for a 457 plan distribution?
Yeah. I never said it was for a 457.
No, you didn't. That's why my question is, because I called it
qualified. Yeah, and this is why you don't want to go it alone. You want to call our office at 888-988-JOSH. The topic that you're describing is called the qualified charitable deduction, or contribution. And we can give you a copy of the publication 590, which is distributions from IRAs. So you would want to roll that 457 to an IRA in order to do that. So when you roll it from your employer plan, it's not necessarily allowed.
Over to an IRA
yeah,
instead of the 457?
Yeah, you can roll that 457 to an IRA. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, okay, because I called them yesterday. They said, no, you can't do that. It's only for IRAs. But now you told me that's the trick. Roll it to an IRA. I could do that right now.
457, roll it to an IRA, and then you do the QCD.
Okay. Can it be contributed to any type of charity? Because I don't. I don't know if it's. I don't know if they get a deduction or what. It's not a.
No, they don't get a deduction. It would be.
I don't know what they do. Yeah, they're not registered. It's just a cause. It's the New Life Church of Healing, but it's not one of those where. I mean, if I donate anything.
C3?
Right, it used to be, but they didn't file. The 5013C, that's right, 5013C.
It has to be a legitimate charity.
It's legitimate. It's registered in the state of New Jersey. It was a 5013C, but then he didn't file taxes, and he lost that status. He would have to refile again, or wouldn't he have to? Does he have to? Does the church have to file?
Well, to get this, yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's what I got. All right. So I think that. Thanks a lot.
And there's a whole section of guidance, and then the other issue is if you're 70 and a half now.
Yes. I'm 72.
457. This may only be applicable for next year, not this current current tax year.
Right. Yeah. They told me it's too late for this year, so I have
but
to
the
get
way
it.
Even though it may be too late this year, you take the 457, you roll it to an IRA, and then you'll be able to do it next year.
Okay, and if I do roll it all over and I never do the charitable, if I never give it to the charity, I'll still get my yearly distributions from the IRA instead of the deferred comp. Everything will remain the same. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot.
Great call, Jerry, and keep the questions coming here. At 888-988-JOSH for the no-obligation review. It sounds like you could benefit from the review because you have a lot going on, and I want to make sure you don't make any mistakes in doing so, okay? So call us at 888-988-JOSH if you have questions regarding the qualified charitable distribution. This show's music theme is gold record singles. So try to guess what we're going to play today for you on the Financial Quarterback radio broadcast. We also have a special presentation today with the author of a book called The Value of Debt in Retirement. It is very clear for those of you who want to know, should I have a mortgage or not? Tom Anderson is the New York Times best-selling author of The Value of Debt in Retirement. It is his second book in the series, At the Value of Debt in the Management of Individual and Family Wealth. You will not want to miss this discussion. Now, his communications director thought it would be a good topic so close to tax day. So Tom offers some valuable ways that people can utilize debt to lower their taxes. So The Value of Debt in Retirement, written by Tom Anderson, who will be joining us in the very near future. Now, Tom had his MBA from UChicago, worked in investment banking before moving into private wealth management. His first book, New York Times and USA Today bestseller, The Value of Debt, was named the number 2 business book of 2013 by wealthmanagement.com. So you won't want to miss that very ingenious book. I get this question a lot. Josh, should I have a mortgage in retirement? And my question is, why shouldn't you have one? And we're going to talk about that. The tax benefits, the wealth benefits, and in the book, The Value of Debt in Retirement, we're going to talk about how wealthier couples can get maybe some extra tax benefits that they didn't realize. And in the book, he teaches you how to help your children, how to assist your parents. A lot of you take care of your elderly parents. How to be better prepared for emergencies. How to fund primary and secondary properties. And how to refinance credit card debt. And maybe you've thought about this. How could you enhance the impact of your charitable giving through having a mortgage? How could you leave a greater legacy? So we have a lot to talk about. The Value of debt. Thomas Anderson will be joining us in about 6 minutes. But first, give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. We're also going to talk about what are the negatives of debt. And now most people might say, well, I hate all kinds of debt. Well, that's not really what we're going after. We're going after a holistic approach. And namely, should you use mortgage debt to create more wealth or to enhance your wealth building properties? That's what we're going to be talking about later on with Thomas Anderson. We're going to give you a final tax chore for April. Maybe you're sick of doing your taxes, planning your taxes. I'm going to give you some final tax tips. So whether you have a question on stocks, bonds, we've had a ton of Social Security questions. We've had a ton of tax questions. Tax day is just around the corner. So did you do your taxes? Do you have any questions? And we're going to give you some tips regarding your taxes later on in the broadcast. We're also going to be talking about life insurance may add rewards for healthy living. So we have a lot to talk about today. The value of debt in retirement, a final tax chore for April. We're also going to be talking about family trusts and how investors are rethinking stocks given to their family trust. And we're going to be talking about a recent Malden Economics article, Economists in Glass Houses. For many economists, the chicken and egg question is which came first, consumption or production? What drives growth? In the book, John Malden does an interesting job of contrasting his views with those of Paul Krugman. He writes, our differences aside, what Paul and I really agree on is that the solution to our current economic dilemma is more and high-quality growth. There is nothing like 5 to 7 nominal growth to tackle a problem of too much debt. And if the real growth is 3%, then so much better, as employment and wages will rise as well. But what drives growth in the economy? That's actually a complex question with multiple answers. There is simply no one magic policy. And he writes that I would think Krugman and I also would agree that the stimulation of growth requires a whole bunch of smart policies. The policy disagreement stems from differing views on fundamental economic questions, as opposed to any simplistic analysis of the numbers of how much debt is a problem. Now, first you have to look at the presuppositions. Then you actually have to look at those who have the understanding of, well, what is the purpose of a central bank? Now, the first thing you want to realize is the biggest problem of the economy is debt. But everyone tries to grow their way out of the economic doldrums by debt. Is that the Keynesian conundrum? Now, he talks about the Keynesian conundrum, which is John Keynes suggested running deficits in times of recession, but also John Keynes advocated paying down that debt after a recession is over. Well, I could get my head around that if I could ever get someone on the Keynesian side to say when exactly it is time to pay the debt back. Mr. Krugman, according to the article, while giving lip service to paying the debt back, never actually articulates what that process would look like. To pay the debt back, you have to run surpluses, or at a very minimum, run deficits that are less than nominal GDP. Now, people are constantly talking about how there are different things that are either Republican or Democrat issues. I would say the debt is a global issue with ramifications on you, whether you are independent, Republican, or Democrat. And we're going to talk later about the national debt and what that means to your stocks. We're also going to be talking about investors are rethinking grantor retained annuity trusts or GRATs. And it can make sense to swap out investments that you lent to a GRAT. If you have a family trust, or if you don't, maybe you want to rethink that. So give us a call. We'll be back after these messages with your calls. We're talking about the value of debt in retirement. This is Josh Jalinski, your financial quarterback. We'll be back with our author. And if you want a copy of the free book, The Value of Debt in Retirement, as a free gift when you schedule and keep your no-obligation review, call us now, 888-988-JOSH, for the no-obligation review, 888-988-5674. I will be this week in Hackensack, Cranford, Toms River, New Jersey, Long Island, New York City, Basking Ridge, New Jersey, and as well as New York City. We'll also be in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So give us a call whether you're in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We'll find a way to meet with you. 888-988-JOSH for the no-obligation review. We'll be back after these messages.
Tax-deferred vehicles such as 401ks and IRAs sound good up front, but did you realize that when you retire, you'll have to pay taxes on all your earnings? You can legally minimize your taxes when you withdraw retirement funds with tax-free IRAs and other tax-favored accounts. Call the Jalinski Advisory Group now at 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH. To learn how you could enjoy a higher standard of living with these tax-favored accounts. Make sure you don't get blindsided by taxes on your retirement plans. Call Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback, now for a complimentary 1-hour consultation to empower your financial decisions. Leave your checkbook at home. They will not sell anything at this meeting, but they'll educate you on your many options in retirement. In fact, if you call right now for one of the complimentary no-fee tax-fighting reviews, they will give you a copy of the book Tax-Free Retirement as a free gift if you call within the next 3 minutes. Call 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH. Now let's get back in the huddle with the financial quarterback.
The first book, The Value of Debt. Thomas, we're being joined by the author, Thomas Anderson. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Josh. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Now, the value of debt, the first thing that comes to mind is why should anybody, now I actually read the book and really found it a great argument for holistic debt management. But what about those who hate debt? The value of debt, I don't think there's value, some might say, listening. Why should I read this book?
It's a good question, and a lot of people hate debt. There's no question about it. And all things equal, of course, we wouldn't like to have it. But I think a lot of people hate taxes, too, and you've got a reputation as being one of the most tax-efficient people out there with a lot of your ideas, and this is complementary to that path. And most importantly, look, I don't think that everybody needs to have debt. But if you're not on track for retirement, it can be a powerful arrow in the quiver to maybe increase those chances, actually increasing your rate of return and reducing your risk.
Yeah. Now, first, we get these value of debt books, books that talk about why you should have a mortgage. But I thought your book did a great job explaining why even if you're wealthy, you should have a mortgage, and why you're not. Even if you're not, you should consider about the wise use of debt. In your book, you talk about holistic management of your finances, which I love. And a lot of people, a lot of financial advisors tell you about rate of return, but they don't really talk about debt management. What is debt management for those who've never heard about it?
Yeah, what it is about having a comprehensive and holistic strategy, one that uses both sides of your balance sheet to help you meet your goals. I don't think that we can be effective just looking at half of the picture. I think that debt can be a very powerful tool if used prudently in the right way. And it's not my belief that all debt is good, and I hope we get into that, nor is it my belief that all people need to have debt, and I hope we get into that as well. But for a certain group of people, the right amount of debt, the right types, can be very effective in keeping them on track.
And you even talk about in your book how people who can sometimes have a $4 or $5 million net worth can pay as little as $4,000 in taxes due to some of the strategies that you talk about in your book. And here's the thing that I love. I would recommend that everybody with a 401k or IRA grab out and get a copy of the book. Grab a book. You can call my office at 888-988-JOSH. Thomas Anderson's communication director sent 5 free copies to the first 5 of you who schedule and keep your no-obligation review at 888-988-JOSH. But I was looking for years, Thomas, and in Chapter 5, you talk about the Joe versus Dan tax scenario. And Joe is a guy who has 0% debt ratio, but pays a whole heck of a lot more in taxes than Dan, even though Dan has a greater balance sheet. And we're going to get to that. But first, let's talk about what would be the difference between good debt versus bad debt, in your opinion.
Yeah, so I really break that into 3 different categories. The first one's what I call oppressive debt. And so that's going to be things like credit card debt that maybe has a 15 or 20% rate on it, maybe a payday loan. Really, any debt that has a rate north of 10% is generally going to be bad debt that you want to eliminate as fast as possible. Look, if you've got a credit card debt running at 15% and you step in and pay that down, you get a guaranteed return of 15%. I don't think there's a lot of things that can offer you that in this environment. I think it's because of a lot of the oppressive debt that is generally bad debt that all debt gets branded in that same category, and I don't think that's necessarily the case because you come into the next category, which is what I call working debt. Working debt is things like maybe a mortgage, perhaps a student loan that's at an attractive rate. If you have a mortgage at 3, 4, or 5%, and your CPA says to you, hey, on your tax bracket, you get to chop a third off of that, so maybe you're borrowing at a cost of 2, 3, or 4, you might not want to rush in to pay that down. And then the best type of debt is what I call enriching debt. That's debt that you're strategically choosing to have but could pay off any time that you want to. You have the money in the bank to pay it off, but now you're thinking and acting like a company, behaving in ways like Apple does, for example.
And what do you mean by that? I mean, I thought it was a great example in your book how companies all the time, they issue debt, but they don't need it, but they use it. And I think that's a great takeaway from the book, folks. If you do not have a financial plan or a financial advisor that looks at your life as a whole and treats your personal balance sheet like a business's balance sheet, you may have a problem. And that's one of the things your book did, teach the everyday consumer how to look at their lives like a business would look at their balance sheet, not just attached with the emotion that some people would put on it, with debt. So continue there.
Oh, Josh, you're exactly right. And, look, I don't think that people are companies. There clearly are differences, but I think that we can definitely learn from what companies do. No matter what room you're in, you can fill it with books and articles written on optimal corporate capital structures. Nobel Prizes have been awarded on this topic. Let's just think about it. If I am a company and I don't have the right capital structure, then someone like Carl Icahn comes along and gets crabby with me. They'll step in, buy my company, fire me, and lever me appropriately. That'd be a leverage buyout. But if I take on too much debt and a crisis comes, then I can go bankrupt. So all that CFOs are doing is really thinking about what's an optimal corporate capital structure. Now, what I do is, Walmart employs over 1 million people, and if they went bankrupt, that would be devastating for those 1 million people. In my family, I have a wife and 3 kids. And so maybe you could say that, hey, since there's only 5 of us versus 1 million of them, we could take more risk. But I don't think that that's intuitively right. I think that companies are in the business of probabilities, but people are in the business of surviving first and foremost. And so what I do is I take corporate debt ratios that I learned from my time in investment banking in New York and my academic studies, and I make them more conservative for individuals, but applying the same principles of power.
That's a great, succinct definition. Now, where would there has been, for years ago, there was a book called Misfortune that was a best-selling book that talked about people using debt, and I was always looking for a book to give clients and listeners when they would call me and say, well, why should I have a mortgage in retirement? And generally, the people who should have a mortgage in retirement are those who have a considerable net worth. And, some of the books that I had recommended were in a lot of ways not misleading, but they left out certain key points that I thought people should know. And I thought your job gave a balanced appraisal of the value of debt in retirement. So let's talk about the value of debt with regard to taxes. Why should someone keep their mortgage with regard to taxes? It is tax day after all. And folks, if you have a question on the value of debt, I'm going to open up the phone lines. Maybe, you listen to Dave Ramsey or other people where you're totally against debt. Maybe there are challengers who hate debt so much that they want to ask a question. I want you to call. Maybe you're looking for optimal ways to get money out of your 401ks or IRAs. I think your book could really help our listeners with that. So the value of debt in retirement, obviously you can probably buy it on Amazon or wherever books are sold. And the website's it's valueofdebtinretirement.com. And you can call our office at 888-988-JOSH for the no obligation book when you schedule your no obligation review at 888-988-5674. But let's get to the tax side. Why would people want to have a mortgage for taxes? And also, we're going to talk about why would you want to have it even if taxes weren't an issue. But first, the tax scenario.
Well, you caught me on a happy morning, and I'm glad you asked that question. I just got an email from somebody today, and he said it worked again. $1.7 million net worth, about a 50-50 split between taxable and tax-deferred assets, and their federal income tax bill was exactly a zero. Their state tax bill came in at $3, and so they chuckled on having to. That's not the refund. That's the total tax that they owed in this $1.7 million scenario. In the book, I give case studies of people who have net worths of, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million, all paying less than $5,000 a year in taxes, and in many cases, zero. So your question, how does this happen? I think in the last presidential election, when Mitt Romney ran, America really learned two things. On one hand, the top 1% doesn't pay as much in taxes as we thought. They have a lot of different tricks and tools that they end up using. On the other side, Mitt Romney got in trouble when he said that 47% of America doesn't pay federal income tax. It turns out that was controversial, but true. They don't pay federal income tax. They pay Social Security and Medicare taxes, which are significant, but they don't pay federal income tax. Well, what about everybody else in the middle that apparently is paying all the taxes? How can they use ideas from basically both sides of that spectrum? The tax code has 4 million words to it, and rather than just take that as something that's dealt to you and you just have to file your return, how can you proactively use that complex system to your advantage? And so what we do is use a combination of borrowing and selling to eliminate taxes throughout retirement.
The other point that you mentioned in the book, and we're going to talk about this when we return, is how you can control your tax situation, especially if you have an IRA, or different accounts, and how in the book, one of the things that surprises you is you talk about how you can have control over your tax bill, even though a lot of people think they can't control it. You may not be able to control the rate, but you could control the strategy. We'll be talking about that when we return with our author, Thomas Anderson, talking about why everything you have been told may be wrong, the value of debt in retirement. Thomas J. Anderson, new book out by Wiley. He's the best-selling author of the original, The Value of Debt. I think this is great that you focused on debt in retirement, because a lot of people have the wrong view of debt in retirement. And we're going to be talking about that when we return. So give us a call, folks, 888-988-JOSH for the no-obligation book when you schedule and keep your no-obligation review. 888-988-5674. You'll get a free copy of the book, The Value of Debt in Retirement. Has strategies in where you can enhance your rate of return, enhance your legacy, potentially pay fewer taxes, and minimize certain risks in your portfolio, potentially. So give us a call, 888-988-5674 for the no-obligation book when you schedule and keep your review. And when we return, we'll be back with your calls. Maybe you have a question of whether or not you should pay off a mortgage, or whether you should get a new one, or whether you should pay down all your debt. Give us a call. We'll be back after these messages. Your tax strategy. And what do you mean by that? Especially in retirement. If somebody has a 401k or IRA, how can they link that with their debt to potentially lower taxes?
Yeah, so it's one of my most powerful and popular ideas by far. It does kind of come into the middle of the book, so we kind of we set the table through the first parts, but we'll kind of walk in and try to do this with as little of math as possible.
We'll set the table a little bit first, though, because I think it is important, because we live in a culture where financial gurus tell people to pay off every debt, even though that's not what they probably themselves did to create their wealth.
You know, I think as we kind of look at that, I think that people really fall into a few different categories as they get closer to retirement. And that is, those who are retired that need a rate of return of less than 3% on their investment portfolio. So, for example, Josh, as you know, if I have $500,000 and I need a 3% return, then that would mean that I need $15,000 or less from my portfolio. Now, this could happen for a few reasons. Maybe I've got a great pension, maybe I have Social Security or just a conservative lifestyle, but I don't need a very high rate of return. And if you fall into that camp, congratulations. In all likelihood, you can benefit from the ideas in the book, but you don't necessarily need a lot of the ideas that are within the book. Statistically, that is about 30% of boomers are feeling, oversaved and massively on track for retirement. But about 70% are not feeling as on track and need a higher rate of return. And so if you need a rate of return between, 3, 4, or 5%, or let's say 6%, then you're in a situation where you're going to have to take some risk. You either have to take that risk with your asset allocation, or you have to take that risk with debt, or you can kind of take it by having a combination of both. And my whole point is that faced with risk, I'd like to take the least risky path. Now, those that need a rate of return higher than those 5 or 6 or even toward a 7%, this is a problematic situation. And mathematically, if you need a rate of return greater than your after-tax cost of debt, rushing in to pay down that debt is going to be mathematically very hard on you. Now, that is quite a bit in that sentence, but let's pull it apart just a little bit. If your CPA says to you that your after-tax cost of a mortgage is 2 or 3%, and we all have limited resources that we're trying to make prioritization choices with, if you take that money and pay down toward that house, you're getting a guaranteed return of 2. That's okay, but the problem is if you just told me that you need a 4 or 5 and you just took your limited assets and put it down on that house, you're asking for a lot of return out of the rest of your portfolio, to get you on track for your goals. And that's my goal, is to get people. It takes money to make money, and I want people to have a bigger pot with liquidity and flexibility, more working for them in a less risky way, so that they can have a better chance of making it mathematically.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. Now, in the book, you talk about the power of debt meeting the ridiculousness of the tax code. And you talk about somebody with $5.5 million of net worth, $240,000 of income, and $4,000 in taxes. And this seems like the person who has saved more than most would also benefit your book, not only the undersaver who is needing a high net rate of return. And if you follow me, listener, for a second, folks, just think about this. I'm going to say this another way. If you can get a 30-year mortgage at 4% today, there are risks there. And Thomas is not saying there is no risk with a debt-inclusive approach in retirement. But if you pay off your mortgage and your mortgage cost you 4 and the write-off was valued at 1.5, when you pay off your mortgage, it's like you're earning 2.5% on that money. So the utility of that money is not that great with a paid off mortgage. Now, if you have debt that's 10 or 15%, that's great debt to pay off, because you essentially will enhance your rate of return by paying off that debt. So any more comments on this whole subject of the power of debt meeting the ridiculousness of the tax code?
Well, first of all, I love visiting with you. You absolutely have these ideas down, and you wouldn't think that they'd be as controversial, because you just said it perfectly, Josh. I love what you said. So let's dive into
Here's why. This is controversial, especially in our industry, folks. I want you to realize, if you listen to the gurus, they tell you pay off all your debt. My company was built on debt. Not a ton of debt, but I took 50, 60 grand of debt when I first started my company to build it, to have my own freedom. And most of you may say the same thing. Maybe you mortgage your house to start your businesses. Maybe you're a real estate millionaire. We have some in the listening audience who have enhanced their net worth by mortgages over time and by using the write-offs of those mortgages. Now, I'm not for the stupid use of debt. I think you can use debt very, if you're taking out a mortgage to buy a jacuzzi or a boat, that's a money pit, and that's a stupid financial decision. But if you're taking a mortgage to enhance your retirement or to lower your taxes, it could be a good strategy. So go on, Thomas.
Oh, you hit the nail on that again. This book is absolutely not about buying stupid stuff that you can't afford. It is about better ways to pay for things that you can afford and to put you on a good path. And so let's dive in with this table being set a little bit on this tax code. I start out with a picture of a liger, which is a lion and a tiger combined together. It's the world's biggest cat. It has what's called hybrid vigor. And or Josh, actually, we just got a puppy in my house. It's a golden doodle. Have you heard of those before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a combination of a golden retriever and a poodle. You get these, great traits from both. And what happens is I basically say, all right, let's look at what we learned from the kind of Mitt Romney situation on one hand of the tax spectrum, and then we'll borrow from the other side of the tax spectrum as well. 47% of America doesn't pay federal income tax. The reason for that is if I'm a married family of 4 making $40,000 a year, I pay 0 federal income tax. You actually receive a net credit, a transfer comes back to you. Now, when you are retired, outside of Social Security payments, any pension that you have, and your RMD, or required minimum distribution, that happens when you're over 70 and a half years old, everything else is actually going to be within your control. What type of investments do you own? How much are you taking out of an IRA? And it is my belief that a lot of times people guess on these frameworks, and I don't think that people should guess with their money. If you start to combine this together, there's a certain amount of income that comes out basically tax-free. And then what happens is, as we all know, we have different deductions that come into our life. So these deductions can be things like charitable contributions. It can be things like medical, property taxes. And of course, mortgage interest ends up being a deduction that in many cases comes right off the top for lots of taxpayers and is not an add back for AMT. So as we all have different deductions, the question is, what's the optimal amount of ordinary income that you want to generate in retirement to be offsetting all of those deductions and paying basically no taxes? And what I show you is basically the first $80,000 to $160,000, depending on the different expenses within your life. And I do a lot of screenshots, and TurboTax Intuit, as the parent company, was very kind to work with us to be able to show simple screenshots of how this comes together. But your first $80,000 to $160,000 is much more tax efficient in higher net worth scenarios than most people think. But as we all know, when income goes over 160, and in particular over 250, it starts to not be nearly as tax efficient. So there what I do is I use a strategy of borrowing to create an income stream. So in the example that you had before, or just to be very simple, if I have a $2 million IRA and I have a $2 million taxable account, what you could do is actually sell down from that IRA, as most Americans do. And if you had a 4% distribution rate, you'd have $80,000 a year coming out of that IRA. On the taxable side of the house, if you borrowed that $80,000, then there's actually no tax consequences on the day that I send that to you. This addresses the taxes. Clearly, there's some risks, and it probably triggers questions. Would you like me to go into more detail from here?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So when I send you the $80,000, there's no question that is risky. What most people are doing when they retire is a financial advisor will use a number of, let's say, 4 or 5% for retirement planning. Well, as we know, most income investments today are creating, the dividend yield on the S&P is 2%. Bonds are paying 2% and less. So how are people getting to a 4? Well, what they do is they have income and dividends for 2, and they typically sell to create that other 2%. Now, selling is problematic as well, because if you are selling your assets, then you are intentionally depleting your capital. And the second that you sell an asset, I know for a fact that you have a guaranteed future return of 0 on that asset, and you have less capital.
And also think about that, folks.
Go
if
ahead.
you sell a capital asset and you're retired, you probably won't be able to save to replace that.
That is exactly right. So most retirees are doing a strategy. They can't get the income they want from investments, so they sell down from appreciated assets. And I understand that. That an asset goes up in value. I bought Apple at a low price. It goes high, and I sell it. But now I have less working for me. If you, instead of selling, borrow, the following happens. Number one, you still have the assets. You triggered no tax consequences. And you have the possibility that the asset could grow at a rate greater than your after-tax cost of that asset. Now, of course, it could go down in value, and we have to talk about the risks because I'm terrified.
We're going to talk about the risks after we take this next break. We'll break for a couple minutes, and then we'll be back with Thomas Anderson talking about the value of debt in retirement. Folks, this is the first book I've read in years that clearly goes over a holistic, wise view of the risks of debt as well as the promises, and even talks about how to leave a greater legacy, charitable giving, and how to enhance your balance sheet, pay less in taxes potentially, especially with tax time. So if you have tax time questions, give us a call. And you could call our office during the break at 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-5674. I'll be this week in Hackensack, New Jersey, Cranford, New Jersey, Basking Ridge. Have a couple spots left this week. You'll want to meet with me in Toms River, New Jersey, Red Bank, New Jersey, Melville and Long Island, and New York City. So give us a call, 888-988-JOSH. We'll be back after these messages.
Tax-deferred vehicles such as 401ks and IRAs sound good up front, but did you realize that when you retire, you'll have to pay taxes on all your earnings? You can legally minimize your taxes when you withdraw retirement funds with tax-free IRAs and other tax-favored accounts. Call the Jalinski Advisory Group now at 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH to learn how you could enjoy a higher standard of living with these tax-favored accounts. Make sure you don't get blindsided by taxes on your retirement plans. Call Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback, now for a complimentary 1-hour consultation to empower your financial decisions. Leave your checkbook at home. They will not sell anything at this meeting, but they'll educate you on your many options in retirement. In fact, if you call right now for one of the complimentary no-fee tax-fighting reviews, they will give you a copy of the book Tax-Free Retirement as a free gift if you call within the next 3 minutes. Call 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH. Now let's get back in the huddle with the financial quarterback.
Oh, great. As that music was coming in, I had so diving in a little bit to the risk section here.
Sure.
Excellent. So, clearly what we can see is that it makes sense, of course, if you're borrowing money, you're not going to end up paying taxes on it. Now, hopefully, listeners are tracking that, wow, that makes sense. Some money comes back tax efficiently, and I could sell some of my money out of my IRA, and then I could, in a tax-efficient way, offsetting my deductions, and then I could borrow the rest, and that's how we get into this hybrid vigor, and where people of virtually any net worth can almost eliminate their taxes by utilizing this approach. But then the question comes into, well, what about the risks? And the risks are vast. First of all, debt in itself is just a magnifying glass. So if you make good investment decisions and you have debt in your life, then those good decisions will look better. But on the other side of that, if you make bad decisions, they'll look worse. And so what happens is I am fearful that many assets around the world might be trading at very expensive levels right now, near record high prices. And I worry that people are going to use these ideas and borrow a bunch of money and lever up their portfolio to buy expensive assets. And that's not what this is about. First of all, I think that people shouldn't have too much debt. I basically think that you should have a debt-to-asset ratio between 15 and 35%. It turns out that most people are either way above that or they're way below that. And then I think you need to be extraordinarily cautious with your asset allocation, working with advisors and exploring a globally diversified portfolio and being cautious of the range of outcomes that we could face as we go forward. I think 2008 needs to be in your base case scenario that you will see something like that again through the course of your retirement. And you need to make sure you have a professional advisor navigating that course for you, or if you're taking the risk of doing it yourself, that you are understanding the risks that we could be facing. Sure.
No, great point. And we're with Thomas Anderson, for those of you just joining us, talking about the value of debt in retirement. And you even talk about debt being used to help charities. What do you mean by that, the enhancing the impact of your charitable giving segment of the book?
Oh, Josh, I'm so glad you asked that. It's one of my favorite ideas in the book, and I have a charitable giving guide in the back of it about how we can make a bigger impact. Here what happens is let's start to kind of build on the different ideas that we've talked about here together. So we know that as we're retired, we're going to be able to be much more tax efficient in most cases than when we're working. But one part of this is that when I'm working, I could actually take money and give it to charity while I'm working, getting the deduction in that year, and then give the money to charities later in retirement. Now, this happens through something called a donor-advised fund, where you can basically shift the years of timing. What I actually do to kind of step that up even further is I say, well, if you have enough assets, what if you actually borrowed to make that charitable contribution, getting the tax benefit in a year that your taxes are particularly high, let's say that you sold a business or had a large retirement payout or something of the sort, get all of that benefit in 1 year, and then you could give that money to charities later, or you could actually borrow to fund a charitable gift annuity. And this is where you're actually borrowing money to give it to a charity, and that charity will then make a commitment to give you an income stream for the rest of your life. Those ideas end up being extraordinarily powerful. They're geared toward generally a little bit higher net worth market, but I think we can all learn from those ideas.
Yeah, and some strategists even use debt to buy life insurance and to finance large life insurances for the, in some cases, super rich.
Sometimes people do that, and that can be effective in some large estate plans in particular. So that you're exactly right. That can be very, very effective.
You got to be cognizant of the risks and generally, be careful that you're not taking all of your money out of your home and using, putting it into riskier asset classes. And that's one of the things that your book is not telling people to do, to take money out of their homes, put it in the stock market. Then the stock market goes down and then they lose their homes. It's really just talking about the wise strategic use of debt to enhance things. You want to comment on that as we conclude?
You hit the nail on the head. I think that you want to be thoughtful and holistic. You want to have the right types of debt in the right amount if you need it. And if you need a rate of return greater than 3% as you come into your retirement, I think you want to use all of the tools that are available to you to create the least risky path, focusing on maximizing your return, reducing your risk, and minimizing taxes. And Josh, you're at the cutting edge of advice of what I think is really going to be wealth management 2.0. You're giving.
If we can have you on for the last couple minutes, folks, we got to take our final break of the hour. 888-988-JOSH. If you want a copy of Thomas's book, Value of Debt in Retirement.com, The Value of Debt in Retirement, Why Everything You May Have Been Told May Be Wrong. New York Times bestselling author Thomas Anderson, so generous to give away 5 copies to the first 5 of you who call our office at 888-988-5674 to schedule a no-obligation review. That's 888-988-JOSH. And I would also add, if you're somebody who needs 3%, but maybe you're somebody who just wants a little extra write-off and an enhancement of their financial plan, maybe you have money to pay off debt. Some of these strategies could be right for you, too, to enhance some of your tax returns. Maybe you have a large IRA and you need some extra write-offs. Give us a call, 888-988-JOSH. We'll be back after these parting messages.
Tax-deferred vehicles such as 401ks and IRAs sound good up front. But did you realize that when you retire, you'll have to pay taxes on all your earnings? You can legally minimize your taxes when you withdraw retirement funds with tax-free IRAs and other tax-favored accounts. Call the Jalinski Advisory Group now at 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH to learn how you could enjoy a higher standard of living with these tax-favored accounts. Make sure you don't get blindsided by taxes on your retirement plans. Call Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback, now for a complimentary 1-hour consultation to empower your financial decisions. Leave your checkbook at home. They will not sell anything at this meeting, but educate you on your many options in retirement. In fact, if you call right now for one of the complimentary, no-fee tax-fighting reviews, they will give you a copy of the book, Tax-Free Retirement, as a free gift. If you call within the next 3 minutes, call 888-988-JOSH. That's 888-988-JOSH. Now, let's get back in the huddle with the financial quarterback.
We're back. This is Josh Jalinski, the financial quarterback, and we're going to take your calls. So if you want to stand in line for listener call-ins, call us now. And if you want a copy of the book, The Value of Debt in Retirement, you can go to valueofdebtinretirement.com, find out how to purchase the book, or if you want to schedule a no-obligation second opinion on your wealth with me or one of our associates, you can call us at 888-988-JOSH, and we'll get a free copy of the bestseller Thomas J. Anderson's new book, The Value of Debt in Retirement. And your parting thoughts, Thomas, as we wrap up.
Josh, I love where you were going there about if you think none of us are as wealthy as the company Apple, right? And Apple has billions of dollars of cash, and they have billions of dollars in debt. Why are they choosing to do that? Is it because the CFO is an idiot? No, it's the most valuable company in the world. They're choosing to do that because they value the liquidity, the flexibility, and the tax benefits that strategy gives them. And I think that we can all learn from that as well, and that's what I'm trying to empower listeners with.
Great. Thanks so much. Hope to have you on again in the future. And I really mean it. I've been looking for a guide to help people understand the pros and cons of debt in a non-hyperbole type of style. And you do a good job of that, because there has been books out there that tell you to go hawk your home and put everything into assets. I mean, I remember there was a book, Stop Sitting on Your Assets. Then there was a book, Misfortune. And I think the mortgage crisis caused publishers to say, we don't want to take on a book like that. But your book does a good job of a balanced appraisal of how you can use debt as a vehicle for greater flexibility in retirement. So great book, and hope to have you on again in the future. I will definitely use it as a guide with our clients at the Jalinski Advisory Group and on the Financial Quarterback radio broadcast. So thanks so much, Thomas. And website, valueofdebtinretirement.com. And you can call our office, folks, 888-988-JOSH. If you want his book, The Value of Debt in Retirement, when you schedule and keep your no-obligation review, you get a free copy of the book, 888-988-JOSH. When you schedule and keep your no-obligation second opinion on your wealth, maybe you're looking at charitable giving. Maybe you don't need debt, but you want it to enhance some of your tax benefits. Give us a call, 888-988-5674. We'll be back.
The preceding program was sponsored by the Jalinski Advisory Group, which is solely responsible for its content.